Chapter 1. What the Immortal King owes me.
Once a slave, 3 generations will be slaves. Your grandfather was a slave, your father was a slave, and you will be a slave for your entire life.
Even if I beat you to death, you must endure it.
Xiandao, you have such lofty ambitions, even dreaming of cultivation.
Why don't you look in a mirror and see what kind of person you are?
You have no talent whatsoever.
I'd rather train a dog than you.
A dog at least knows how to wag its tail and beg its master for mercy.
Can you good for nothing. Xiandao, how dare you secretly learn my Zhou family's martial arts? You're asking for that.
Today, I'll beat you to death, you dog slave. Xiandao opened his eyes, wanting to stand up. He knew his current situation wasn't very good. He was a transmigrator, having crossed over 3 months ago to become a small house slave in the Zhou family, subject to their bullying. Of course, Xiandao refused to accept his fate and began secretly learning the Zhou family's martial arts. He was then discovered, and the young master of the Zhou family led people to beat him to death, discarding him in the mass grave outside the city. Opening his eyes, Xiandao looked around in surprise. This wasn't the mass grave. This was a magnificent, resplendent palace, and Xiandao was lying in a room within the palace.
Master, you're a whack.
At this moment, a gentle female voice sounded, making Xiandao's eyes widen. Who are you? Xiandao asked.
I am the steward of the Bank of the Universe, Little 7.
The gentle female voice replied.
Bank of the Universe.
Xiandao frowned as he looked around and saw Little 7. A beauty.
An unparalleled beauty.
Xiandao swore that even with all the cosmetics, beauty filters, and enhancements in his previous life, he had never seen a woman more beautiful than Little 7.
Little 7's beauty was unreal.
It was like a delicate piece of paper, only meant to be admired, not touched. Once touched, it would shatter.
The Bank of the Universe is the most mysterious bank in this universe.
Master, during your journey to this world, you became the 9th owner of the Bank of the Universe. Little 7 replied. The 9th owner? What about the previous 8?
Xiandao cleverly grasped the key point of the question.
He wasn't overwhelmed by everything before him. They died. Little 7 said regretfully. How did they die? Xiandao immediately asked.
The cause of death is unknown.
Little 7 is merely an auxiliary artifact spirit.
Besides the Bank of the Universe, it can't go anywhere else.
I know nothing about what the previous 8 owners did outside. Little 7 replied. You're an artifact spirit? Xiandao said with a hint of regret. Such a beautiful woman, yet she was an artifact spirit?
Yes, I am an artifact spirit, born from the Bank of the Universe. As long as the Bank of the Universe doesn't perish, I will not die.
Little 7 nodded.
Then what is this Bank of the Universe for?
Xiandao asked curiously. A bank is naturally for transactions. All things in the world can be used for transactions. The only difference is the size of the price. Little 7 replied. Anything can be exchanged.
Xiandao's eyes lit up.
Yes. Since its inception, the Bank of the Universe has completed countless transactions, fair and honest, in black and white. Once a contract is signed, it takes effect. Little 7 said proudly. Transactions require capital. What does the Bank of the Universe currently have? Xiandao asked. Little 7's smile froze, and she lowered her head, saying, due to the poor management of the previous owners, the Bank of the Universe is currently empty. Many facilities and areas are sealed, and only this palace is still operational.
Poor management.
Xiandao frowned. It means many debts couldn't be collected, leading to breaches of contract. Once a contract is breached, the owner will be punished. I suspect the deaths of the previous owners are related to this. Little 7 replied. What kind of debts are these? These people are truly something. It's only right to pay back what you owe. Xiandao stood up, dissatisfied. These are all debt contracts. Little Seven waved her hand in the air, and a large pile of contracts appeared before Li Xiandao. Li Xiandao picked one up, read it carefully, and his eyes widened. Eternal Immortal King, borrowed one supreme immortal artifact from the Bank of the Universe, to be returned as 2 after 3,000 years. For every 1,000 years overdue, one additional artifact will be added. The Eternal Immortal King, the Invincible Immortal King praised throughout the 9 heavens and 10 lands, who, with a single eternal immortal sword, slew so many that the immortal realm changed owners?
Li Xiandao's voice trembled.
Yes, he is the one who defaults on his debts. Little Seven nodded.
The Eternal Immortal King, a ruthless individual who fought from the 9 heavens and 10 lands all the way to the immortal realm.
His weapon, the Eternal Immortal Sword, is a symbol of invincibility. And you're telling me he's a defaulter? Li Xiandao swallowed hard. The world he transmigrated to was an extremely vast universe, from the highest immortal realm to the 9 heavens and 10 lands, with a vast territory, a large population, and an incredibly strong cultivation culture. Everyone sought to enter the 9 heavens and 10 lands, and then from there, to enter the immortal realm. Li Xiandao was currently in a corner of the Great Separation Land, within the 9 heavens and 10 lands. However, Little Seven was now telling him that the Eternal Immortal King, worshipped by countless people in the invincible immortal realm, owed the Bank of the Universe, and thus him, a huge sum? It was a bit absurd. How could he ever get it back? Little Seven corrected Li Xiandao, saying, "Master, that eternal immortal sword of the Eternal Immortal King is not his, but the Bank of the Universe's. Now that you are the owner of the Bank of the Universe, that means the Eternal Immortal Sword is yours." "It's mine." Li Xiandao's eyes lit up, and he murmured, "That's right." The Eternal Immortal King knows the contract exists, but simply refuses to fulfill it. He has long since violated the agreement. According to the contract, for every 1,000 years, he must compensate with one immortal artifact of the same quality. It has been 10,000 years now, which means the Eternal Immortal King owes you, Master, 10 powerful immortal artifacts. Little Seven waved her arm, her voice resonating clearly. 10 powerful immortal artifacts. Li Xiandao was stunned. Little Seven then produced 2 more contracts, saying, "This one belongs to the Frost Moon Immortalis, and this one belongs to the Primordial Venerable. Both are famous bad debts. The contracts have expired and been breached, so Master has the responsibility to reclaim them."
The Frost Moon Immortalis, the legendary most beautiful woman in the immortal realm, with countless admirers.
The Primordial Venerable, one of the ancient gods of war. These are all supreme experts in the immortal realm. Li Xiandao exclaimed. But now, all these people owed him things. Looking closely at the contracts again, Li Xiandao's eyes brightened. Frost Moon Immortalis, borrowed a peerless appearance from the Bank of the Universe, to be returned after 10,000 years. Overdue will result in forfeiture of life.
Primordial Venerable, borrowed 10,000 years of lifespan from the Bank of the Universe to seek a breakthrough.
After breakthrough, to repay 100,000 years of lifespan to the Bank of the Universe. Overdue will result in a 10-fold increase. So the Frost Moon Immortalis had originally bought her peerless appearance from the Bank of the Universe to become the most beautiful woman in the immortal realm. And the Primordial Venerable owed the Bank of the Universe 100,000 years of lifespan, with a 10-fold increase if overdue, meaning 1 million years of lifespan. Li Xiandao's breathing suddenly became rapid, and he excitedly said, "It's only right to pay back what you owe. What if he's an immortal king? What if she's the most beautiful woman? What if he's an invincible god of war? One day, I will make them all pay back what they owe." I support Master. There are countless bad debts like these. Throughout the entire 9 heavens and 10 lands, the previous owners lent out so many things. After their deaths, they all became bad debts. Now, Master needs to reclaim them and re-establish the prestige of the Bank of the Universe. Little Seven said excitedly. Chapter 2. The First Transaction. After the initial excitement, Li Xiandao became serious and asked, "What exactly is the purpose of the Heaven and Earth Bank?" "Right now, I'm a complete waste, without any cultivation or talent." Li Xiandao's voice was filled with frustration as he spoke. He had been transmigrated for 3 months, yet he still couldn't escape his slave status. This was because his body's grandfather had become a servant of the Zhou family, and for 3 generations thereafter, they would automatically be their servants. Li Xiandao was born a slave, with no choice in the matter. How could the transmigrated Li Xiandao accept this? For 3 months, Li Xiandao had been secretly learning the Zhou family's martial arts and cultivation techniques, but with very little success. Ultimately, it was because Li Xiandao was too old and had missed the best age for cultivation. Furthermore, his talent was of the lowest grade, worse than that of an ordinary person. After 3 months, he hadn't even crossed the first threshold of cultivation, the pioneering stage. Little Seven said, "Master, there's no need to worry. The Heaven and Earth Bank has the right to buy and sell everything. As its master, you have inherited everything from the Heaven and Earth Bank. Although the Heaven and Earth Bank is very dilapidated now, its potential is limitless. The talent that Master is worried about can be absorbed as long as someone is willing to give up their unrivaled talent." Li Xiandao's eyes lit up, and he eagerly asked, "Can everything in the world be traded?" "That's right. As long as someone is willing, and you, Master, nod your head, a trade can be made." Little Seven nodded. "But there's nothing in the Heaven and Earth Bank right now," Li Xiandao said with regret. "That's something Master needs to figure out." Little Seven said helplessly. Li Xiandao closed his eyes, and suddenly thought of something. He asked, "Can I exchange my lifespan with someone else?" Little Seven immediately nodded and said, "You are the master of the Heaven and Earth Bank, so of course you can." Li Xiandao immediately asked, "But what about customers?" Li Xiandao was eager to make a transaction and develop the Heaven and Earth Bank, but there wasn't a single customer. Little Seven waved her hand, and 3 blood-red pocket watches appeared out of thin air. They were exquisitely crafted, with hollowed-out interiors, and ticked away the time. Little Seven explained, "Master, these are the invitation letters of the Heaven and Earth Bank. As long as Master chooses the content of the transaction in your mind, the pocket watch will find a suitable candidate. If the other party agrees, they will enter the Heaven and Earth Bank to trade with Master." "That powerful?" Li Xiandao asked in surprise. In its peak period, the Heaven and Earth Bank had millions of pocket watches and hundreds of thousands of envoys, dominating the 9 heavens and 10 lands, unrivaled in the immortal realm.
No wonder to provoke it.
Now, it has declined to only 3 pocket watches left, Little Seven said sadly. Li Xiandao took a pocket watch and said to Little Seven, "Don't worry, I will restore the prestige of the Heaven and Earth Bank. One day, I will go door to door to those powerful beings who haven't repaid their debts and get back what's owed." Little Seven smiled and said, "I believe in Master. Let's choose the first person now." Li Xiandao closed his eyes and began to think about what he wanted to trade. His lifespan. 5 years of his lifespan. Li Xiandao was only 18 years old this year. Although he had missed the best time for cultivation, he was still young and had decades of life left. Taking out 5 years as initial trading capital was not a problem. The pocket watch received the information, slowly faded in Li Xiandao's palm, and disappeared. At the same time, Li Xiandao matured a bit. Losing 5 years of lifespan didn't affect him much. Little Seven said, "The pocket watch has gone to find a suitable person for the trade. Because the Heaven and Earth Bank is very weak now, the range the pocket watch can go is not large, probably within a 1,000-mile radius around Master." Li Xiandao nodded and said, "I hope it's quick. Tell me more about the Heaven and Earth Bank's information." Little Seven immediately nodded and then began to tell Li Xiandao about the Heaven and Earth Bank. The Great Separation Land, one of the major territories in the 9 heavens and 10 lands, was vast and expansive. Taicong, a small city in a remote area of the Great Separation Land. Here, there were 3 major aristocratic families. the Zhou family, the Lin family, the Zhong family. The three families jointly controlled Taicong City, and each family had an ancestor in the Tao-seeking realm suppressing it. Cultivation realms, starting from the pioneering stage, then entering the immortal transformation, and life wheel realms, finally reaching the Tao-seeking realm. A Tao-seeking realm expert could control the elemental energy of heaven and earth, so their power was immense. In Taicong City, each of the three great families had a Tao-seeking ancestor. However, recently, a problem had arisen with the Li family's ancestor. He was too old, and his lifespan was nearing its end, with not much time left. The entire Li family panicked. Without a Tao-seeking realm ancestor to suppress them, the Zhou and Zhong families would instantly devour the Li family. All sorts of medicinal herbs, countless physicians, and alchemists were invited. But they were all at a loss. The Li family was in a panic. Completely panicked. The Zhou family and Zhong family were poised and ready, recalling the experts within their families, just waiting for the news of the Li family ancestor's death to immediately annihilate the Li family. The entire Taicong City was on the verge of a storm. And at this moment, the Li family ancestor, who had been in a coma for 7 days and 7 nights, with his breath so weak it was almost imperceptible, opened his eyes and saw a pocket watch. A ticking pocket watch.
A blood red pocket watch.
And through this pocket watch, he saw infinite possibilities. The Li family ancestor gathered his last bit of strength and grabbed the pocket watch. No matter what it is, as long as it can keep me alive, any price is acceptable, the Li family ancestor murmured. In the Heaven and Earth Bank, Little Seven suddenly said to Xiandao, "Master, we have a customer."
Xiandao's eyes lit up.
That fast. Clean up and prepare for the transaction, Xiandao said in a deep voice. Little Seven waved her hand, and Xiandao and she arrived in a grand and bright hall. Xiandao changed into a dark Xian-colored robe and wore a dark golden mask on his face. Xiandao didn't want to reveal his face yet. He was still very weak. The next second, the Li family ancestor appeared in the hall. White-haired,
wrinkled face, thick with the aura of death.
Slumped in a chair, unable to even stand up. This was an old man on the verge of death. Where was the prestige of a Tao-seeking ancestor?
Where is this place?
The Li family ancestor's eyes widened, looking at Xiandao in disbelief. He couldn't see through Xiandao's cultivation, nor could he see Xiandao's face, only a mysterious figure wearing a dark golden mask.
This is the Heaven and Earth Bank.
You received our pocket watch. State what you wish to trade, Xiandao said indifferently. Lifespan, I want to live, I cannot die. The Li family ancestor didn't care about anything else, speaking urgently. The footsteps of death were approaching, and the Li family ancestor heard them clearly. He was afraid. He didn't want to die. Not just for himself, but also for the vast Li family. If he died, the Li family would surely crumble and be utterly finished. This was the fruit of his life's efforts. So he looked at Xiandao with hope, wanting to seize even a glimmer of hope. He wanted to live. Xiandao nodded, meeting the expectant gaze of the Li family ancestor, and said, I can give you 5 years of lifespan, but what will you offer in trade? The Li family ancestor excitedly said, anything, as long as I have it, just name your price. Little Seven whispered in Xiandao's ear, the Heaven and Earth Bank is currently most lacking in spirit veins. The Li family has a high-grade spirit vein. Xiandao nodded and said, 1 high-grade spirit vein for 5 years of your lifespan. If you agree, sign the contract. Little Seven immediately produced a contract, clearly written in black and white. The Li family ancestor was stunned. He hadn't expected Xiandao to ask for a high-grade spirit vein. His Li family only had that 1 high-grade spirit vein. It was incredibly valuable. Even people from some major powers would covet a high-grade spirit vein. 1 high-grade spirit vein was worth 100 mid-grade spirit veins. It could allow an ordinary person to cultivate to the Tao-seeking realm. What the Zhang family and Zhou family coveted was precisely this high-grade spirit vein. To exchange it for 5 years of lifespan, was it worth it?
Chapter 3 de Transaction Tax Effect. A transaction.
After weighing the pros and cons, the old ancestor of the Li family decided to make a deal with Li Xiandao. If he lived for 5 more years, he could protect the Li family for 5 years, ensuring that a Dao-seeking realm expert would emerge from the Li family within that time, and then he could pass away. If he died now, with no Dao-seeking realm expert in the Li family, everyone in the clan would surely perish. If the Li family was annihilated, what use would a spiritual pulse be? Rather than benefiting the Zhou and Zhong families, it was better to use it for a transaction. After signing the contract, the old ancestor of the Li family looked at Li Xiandao expectantly. Xiao Qi put away the contract and nodded in satisfaction. Li Xiandao knew that this matter was settled, so he stood up and walked over to the old ancestor of the Li family. Xiao Qi had already taught Li Xiandao that in the Heaven and Earth Bank, Li Xiandao was a god. The only god. Whatever Li Xiandao wanted to do, he only needed a thought. No one in the Heaven and Earth Bank was a match for Li Xiandao. In fact, they couldn't even get close to Li Xiandao's body. Li Xiandao reached out, extracted 5 years of his own lifespan, and then injected it into the body of the old ancestor of the Li family. In an instant, the white-haired, decrepit old ancestor of the Li family seemed to reverse aging, becoming younger. He was still an old man, but completely different from his previous state of having 1 foot in the grave. Now the old ancestor of the Li family had 5 years. For 5 years, he would remain like this. Once the 5 years passed, he would die immediately. The old ancestor of the Li family looked at his body in disbelief. Before, he couldn't even stand. Now he could walk freely. Before, even breathing was difficult. Now he felt full of power. Before, his body was withered inside. Now he felt full of power. He had truly come back to life. He had gained 5 more years of lifespan, exchanged for a high-grade spiritual pulse. The old ancestor of the Li family looked at Li Xiandao in shock, at Li Xiandao's dark golden mask, as if seeing a god or demon. This kind of method was unheard of, simply terrifying from the bottom of one's heart. Li Xiandao said indifferently, "I have given you 5 years of lifespan. Soon, I will send an envoy to your mansion to collect this spiritual pulse. I hope you will not break the contract." As he spoke of breaking the contract, Li Xiandao waved his sleeve, and a gust of wind swept the old ancestor of the Li family away. The old ancestor of the Li family had no room to resist. Thump. After a dizzying spin, the old ancestor of the Li family opened his eyes and looked around. He was back. His room. What terrifying power! I certainly cannot offend them. The old ancestor of the Li family cried out in inner terror. Someone. His children and grandchildren who were guarding outside the room, hurriedly pushed the door open and entered, then saw a different old ancestor.
Father, you are.
The eldest son of the Li family, also the most hopeful person to break through to the Dao-seeking realm, looked at his father in shock. His father, who had been on his last breath. His father, who could only lie in bed. His father, who could pass away at any moment, had actually stood up. And his complexion and aura were unfathomable. How was this possible? Everyone in the Li family looked on in disbelief. The old ancestor of the Li family's face darkened, and he said, "I have faced death and been reborn, receiving the favor of heaven and earth, becoming younger. There's no need to worry anymore." Everyone in the Li family became excited and jubilant. As long as the old ancestor was here, the Li family would be here. If the old ancestor died, the Li family would most likely perish as well. And just at this moment, a young servant ran over in a panic, shouting, "This is bad! The people from the Zhong family and Zhou family are here, saying they're here to attend the old ancestor's funeral." Everyone in the Li family glared, filled with anger. The old ancestor of the Li family sneered, "Attend my funeral? I'd like to see if they have the ability." Having exchanged a spiritual pulse for 5 years of life, the old ancestor of the Li family now felt full of confidence, fearless, and strode out quickly. Everyone in the Li family immediately followed him out.
De Li mansión. Outside de gate.
Many people had gathered, divided into 2 factions, led by 2 old men, staring at the gate of the Li mansion. That old geezer from the Li family is probably dead. The old ancestor of the Zhou family said coldly. A Dao-seeking realm expert can live for a maximum of 300 years. Even if he was at the 9th stage of the Dao-seeking realm, he only managed to cling to life for over 290 years. This year is his limit. The old ancestor of the Zhong family scoffed. In previous years, the Li family always suppressed our 2 families.
Now is the time for revenge.
The old ancestor of the Zhou family said indifferently. Grandpa, the eldest daughter of the Li family is beautiful. I want her. The young master of the Zhou family's eyes showed greed, and he said excitedly. The old ancestor of the Zhou family said nonchalantly, she's just a woman. Take her and have some fun if you want. The young master of the Zhou family nodded excitedly and said, I'll make sure to properly savor the eldest daughter of the Li family then, to make her regret always looking down on me. Let's break in. The Li family people are all hiding inside, refusing to come out, acting like cowards. The young master of the Zhong family said indifferently. Right, with our 2 families joining forces, unless the old ancestor of the Li family recovers his strength, the Li family will surely be defeated today. The old ancestor of the Zhou family said confidently. Recover. The old ancestor of the Zhong family scoffed, saying, unless he breaks through the Dao-seeking realm and enters a deeper realm, but with his withered vitality, breaking through that would be extremely difficult. Break in. The young master of the Zhou family roared, charging forward first, kicking out, intending to kick open the main gate. Boom. But a terrifying aura erupted, directly sending the young master of the Zhou family flying, his blood churning, a mouthful of fresh blood spurting out, and he said in disbelief, what kind of terrifying power is this? The old ancestor of the Zhou family and the old ancestor of the Zhong family's faces changed drastically, looking on in disbelief. This was the power of the Dao-seeking realm. This was the aura of the Dao-seeking realm. Was this the old ancestor of the Li family? Impossible. The old ancestor of the Li family's vitality has completely weakened. The old ancestor of the Zhou family frowned deeply. Right, it absolutely cannot be the old ancestor of the Li family. Who exactly is playing tricks? The old ancestor of the Zhong family shouted coldly, his voice powerful, echoing all around.
You 2 juniors, this old man is not dead yet, and you dare to come to provoke me, seeking that.
The old ancestor of the Li family's cold voice came, as he walked out from the mansion, his eyes flashing with cold light. The old ancestor of the Zhong family and the old ancestor of the Zhou family's faces darkened, looking at the vigorous old ancestor of the Li family, exchanging incredulous glances. Impossible, the old geezer's time was up. When I saw him last year, his vitality was failing, there was absolutely no way he could be like this. The old ancestor of the Zhong family frowned tightly, in disbelief.
Don't play the old man here.
We are all in the Dao-seeking realm. Your tone of scolding juniors is simply absurd. The old ancestor of the Zhou family said coldly, highly displeased. The old ancestor of the Li family sneered, his eyes mocking. We are all in the Dao-seeking realm, so you can stand on equal footing with me? If my time wasn't up, would you dare to openly confront my Li family? Are the 9th heaven of the Dao-seeking realm and the early and middle stages of the Dao-seeking realm the same?
If he wanted to kill you, do you think you could escape?
The old ancestor of the Li family's eyes suddenly became violent. Chapter 4. Li Xiandao appears. The Li family's old ancestor was at the 9th heaven of the Dao inquiry realm, just a step away from breaking through to the next level. If it weren't for his weakening vitality and inability to sustain himself, he wouldn't have slowly aged to death. Now that he had bought 5 years of lifespan from Li Xiandao, although he couldn't break through, He could maintain this realm for 5 years, allowing the Li family's old ancestor to still suppress the Zhou family's old ancestor and the Zhong family's old ancestor. Don't boast. I don't believe it. Without a breakthrough, do you still have your former strength? The Zhong family's old ancestor couldn't believe that the Li family's old ancestor could defy the laws of nature. No matter if it was the first heaven or the 9th heaven of the Dao Inquiry realm, one could only live for 300 years. The 300-year limit, even for ancient holy lands and peerless powerhouses, was inescapable. Unless you break through to the next realm. The Li family's old ancestor hadn't broken through, and he was 300 years old this year. He was sure to die. He must be faking it, using some stimulating medicine to temporarily boost his state and scare them. The Zhou family's old ancestor and the Zhong family's old ancestor had the same thought. The Li family's old ancestor must be faking it. You old geezer, today, no matter what you say or do, the Li family will be annihilated. The Zhou family's old ancestor smirked menacingly. Why bother talking nonsense with him? No matter how much he pretends, he can't change the outcome of his 300-year limit. He will die today. The Zhong family's old ancestor said coldly. The Li family's old ancestor looked reverent and said, "Yes, I can't change the outcome of the 300-year limit, but there are so many powerful beings in the world. I can't change it, but someone else can." The Li family's old ancestor thought of the Heaven and Earth Bank, of Li Xiandao, and of that contract. After signing, he gained 5 more years of life. Maintaining this peak state for 5 years was simply miraculous. The limit that even ancient holy lands couldn't change was altered by a single contract. Thinking this, the Li family's old ancestor felt even more awe towards the Heaven and Earth Bank. Absolutely must not offend them. You won't give up until you hit a wall, so I'll grant your wish. The Li family's old ancestor's blood surged within him. The long-lost, familiar power returned, and he unleashed his famous technique. 100 battles of yellow sand. Rumble. With a sudden punch, it directly enveloped them. In an instant, yellow sand filled the air, battle intent boiled, raging like wildfire. This punch was incredibly powerful, a peak punch from the 9th heaven of the Dao Inquiry realm. In an instant, the area in front of the Li family's gate seemed to transform into the desert of Mo Bay. The people of the Zhong family and the Zhou family were all enveloped within it. Under this punch, those with lower strength immediately found it difficult to breathe from the pressure. The Zhong family's old ancestor and the Zhou family's old ancestor's expressions changed drastically. They suddenly realized that they had been wrong. The Li family's old ancestor wasn't faking it. He had truly recovered to his peak. They had long heard of this 100 battles of yellow sand boxing technique, but they had never seen it. Now that they had, it truly lived up to its reputation. Overbearing. Blessing. Surging. The Li family's old ancestor's blood and qi burned like a raging inferno. How could he look like an old man whose time was up?
Heaven's secret sword.
The Zhou family's old ancestor immediately drew his magic weapon, a glowing long sword, and unleashed his sword technique to block the punch. The Zhong family's old ancestor showed no weakness, his body moving like lightning, rushing forward to attack at close quarters, fiercely launching his heart-piercing punch. He still refused to believe it and wanted to kill the Li family's old ancestor. Slap. But the next second, the Li family's old ancestor reached out and grabbed. His shriveled hand, like cold iron, seized the Zhong family's old ancestor's fist, then twisted it fiercely. Crack. The Zhong family's old ancestor's arm instantly shattered, making him let out a heart-wrenching scream. With a single blow, the Li family's old ancestor crippled one of his arms. As for the Zhou family's old ancestor, he had directly confronted the Li family's old ancestor's 100 battles of yellow sand, and was immediately struck dizzy and disoriented. He coughed up large mouthfuls of blood, and his magic sword also fell to the ground.
Silence fell all around.
The people of the Zhou family and the Zhong family watched in horror. Their old ancestors were both injured, one screaming in agony, the other spitting blood, a truly gruesome sight. Meanwhile, the Li family's old ancestor stood coldly in the center of the field, not even moving a single step. Indeed, as he said, the two old ancestors of the Zhou and Zhong families were not qualified to put on airs in front of him.
You tell me, how's old ideal with you?
The Li family's old ancestor said coldly. The Zhou family's old ancestor and the Zhong family's old ancestors' faces turned ashen, their hearts filled with desolation. Would begging for mercy work? The Li family's old ancestor was decisive in his actions and would surely annihilate their two families. Knowing that begging for mercy is useless, so you're not begging anymore? The Li family's old ancestor sneered. The Zhong family's old ancestor said with a pale face, "Today, we've fallen. We are all ruthless individuals who know each other well. This Taicong city will be dominated by your Li family from now on. The only thing I don't understand is, who exactly allowed you to defy the laws of fate?" The Zhou family's old ancestor asked, unwilling to accept his defeat. If it weren't for that person, the Li family's old ancestor would already be dead, and they could have smoothly divided the Li family's assets. The Li family's old ancestor's expression was solemn as he said, "That is a mysterious place. It's better if you don't know."
Now, go to hell.
The Li family's old ancestor said coldly, "Wait, let me kill them."
Suddenly, a voice came, startling everyone.
The Li family's old ancestor frowned, looking at the newcomer. Everyone looked at the person who had arrived, and without exception, they all frowned. Young Master Zhou said in surprise, "Li Xiandao, weren't you beaten to death by me?" The Zhou family's old ancestor glanced at Li Xiandao with disdain and completely ignored him. This was their former family servant. The Li family's old ancestor was about to reprimand, "How dare a servant with no cultivation interrupt?" But the next second, Li Xiandao took out something that made the Li family's old ancestor's eyelids twitch.
A pocket watch.
A ticking pocket watch.
A blood-red pocket watch.
The Li family's old ancestor immediately snapped to attention, his previous disdain instantly vanishing. He hurriedly ran to Li Xiandao respectfully saying, "Are you the envoy?" This scene stunned everyone. The people of the Li family looked at each other. What was going on? Their old ancestor,
The invincible old ancestor,
was actually being so respectful to a servant with no cultivation? Young Master Zhou was dumbfounded. In his eyes, Li Xiandao was a servant, someone to be killed at will. And the Li family's old ancestor was a high and mighty Dao Inquiry Realm powerhouse. There was no connection between the two. One was in the heavens. One was on the earth. But now, this heaven was bowing low to earth, with a respectful attitude, not daring to disobey in the slightest. Had he misjudged, or was there something wrong with this world? The Zhou family's old ancestor and the Zhong family's old ancestor also watched, dumbfounded. What on earth was going on? Li Xiandao, however, remained calm and composed. He put away the pocket watch and said, "Is the spirit vein ready?" The Li family's old ancestor respectfully said, "It's already prepared, it's within the Li family." Li Xiandao nodded, then looked at the Zhou family members with a cold gaze. It was this young Master Zhou who had beaten him to death. If it weren't for the Heaven and Earth Bank, Li Xiandao would already be dead. "Can I kill them?" Li Xiandao asked the Li family's old ancestor. "Of course, you can do as you please.
I cover you.
Whoever dares to resist, I'll kill them immediately," the Li family's old ancestor said without hesitation. He dared not offend Li Xiandao. Don't look at Li Xiandao having no cultivation. But behind Li Xiandao stood a mysterious and unfathomable Heaven and Earth Bank. The bank owner with the dark golden mask must be a peak powerhouse. Li Xiandao was his envoy, so even without cultivation, the Li family's old ancestor had to serve him well.
Chapter 5 Revenge must be taken.
Everyone from the Li family looked at Li Xiandao. Everyone from the Zhou family looked at Li Xiandao. Everyone from the Zhong family looked at Li Xiandao. No one expected that Li Xiandao, a lowly servant, could make the Li family's old ancestor respectfully obey him. Especially young Master Zhou. He stared at Li Xiandao with a dazed expression, his heart churning, his mouth full of bitterness. Li Xiandao was his family's servant. His grandfather had sold himself to the Zhou family back then, so all 3 generations after him had to remain servants. Li Xiandao's grandfather had been executed by him when he was young. Li Xiandao's father had been severely injured and died 3 years ago after he angrily slapped him. And Li Xiandao himself, after being discovered secretly learning martial arts, was beaten half to death and thrown into a mass grave, barely clinging to life. Young Master Zhou had never imagined that Li Xiandao could come back to life. He trembled and said, "Li Xiandao, you were raised by my Zhou family. Your father and your grandfather were all supported by the Zhou family. Without the Zhou family, your grandfather would have died long ago, and there would have been no possibility of you or your father existing." Li Xiandao sneered. "If that's the case, should I thank you?" Young Master Zhou immediately said, "I don't need your thanks, I just ask that you don't kill me." He was afraid of death.
Truly afraid of that.
Having lived recklessly for over a decade, he couldn't bear to die. Li Xiandao said in a low voice, "You asked me not to kill you, but when you killed my grandfather, killed my father, and tried to kill me, why didn't you think of these things?" Young Master Zhou's face instantly turned pale, and he stammered, "Those were all misunderstandings. I didn't do it. Look, aren't you still alive and well now?" Li Xiandao's eyes filled with killing intent, and he said, "If it weren't for a miraculous encounter, I would have returned to the heavens long ago. You want me to spare you? Dream on."
Not just you, no one from the Zhou family will live today.
"Today, I will kill you and then completely annihilate the Zhou family." Li Xiandao said coldly, his voice not loud, but every word resonated, making everyone from the Zhou family tremble and watch in terror. The Li family's old ancestor looked at Li Xiandao, his eyes flickering. This Zhou family servant was originally going to be beaten to death by young Master Zhou. But the master of the Bank of the Universe saved him, gave him a new life, and made him an envoy. This was an incredible stroke of luck. The Li family's old ancestor made up his mind that even if Li Xiandao had no cultivation, he absolutely could not be offended. Young Master Zhou trembled as he looked at Li Xiandao. "Are you really going to exterminate us?"
Exterminate.
Li Xiandao sneered, finding it truly amusing. "When you beat me to the brink of death and threw me into a mass grave to fend for myself, wasn't that extermination? Li family's old ancestor, do you have a sword?" Li Xiandao asked coldly. "This is my artifact long sword." The Li family's old ancestor immediately handed his former precious sword to Li Xiandao. Li Xiandao casually took it and, in young Master Zhou's terrified gaze, struck down hard. A head rolled down, spinning.
A gentleman's revenge is never too late, even after 10 years.
A petty person's revenge is sought day and night. Li Xiandao was not a gentleman, nor was he a petty person. He would endure when there was no opportunity, and seek revenge when there was, striking a fatal blow and giving the opponent no chance to argue. As the 9th master of the Bank of the Universe, Li Xiandao's future was limitless. Young Master Zhou, in his eyes, was not worth mentioning. Li family's old ancestor, "Kill everyone, then hand over the spirit vein to me," Li Xiandao said nonchalantly after killing young Master Zhou. The person he hated most was already dead. Li Xiandao had no interest in killing the others and let the Li family's old ancestor do it himself. He just wanted to get the spirit vein now, return to the Bank of the Universe, and start researching it.
All right, envoy, please wait a moment.
This old man is very quick. The Li family's old ancestor was right. He was indeed very quick. His long sword was sharp, and he was at the peak of the Dao Inquiry realm, unrivaled. This was a massacre. It lasted only 1 minute, and everyone from the Zhou and Zhong families was killed. All were killed with a single blow, with not much blood, dying quickly, which stunned the people of the Li manor. "Envoy, it's done," the Li family's old ancestor said respectfully after killing everyone. "All right, hand over the high-grade spirit vein. I'll take it and leave." Don't tell anyone about what happened between us, Li Xiandao said indifferently, his attitude very cold. It was as if he was at the peak of the Dao inquiry realm, and the Li family's old ancestor had no cultivation at all. The Li family's old ancestor didn't mind. He had long passed the stage of being impulsive. What if Li Xiandao's attitude was cold? He just needed to be a little more enthusiastic. The high-grade spirit vein is in the secret chamber within the manor, sealed by a formation. Please come with this old man, envoy, to retrieve the spirit vein, the Li family's old ancestor said. Li Xiandao nodded and followed the Li family's old ancestor into the Li Manor's secret chamber. About 10 meters deep underground, a spacious secret chamber with countless lines carved on its walls, forming a formation. At the center of the formation was the high-grade spirit vein. A spirit vein, like a flood dragon, was being suppressed by countless formations, trapped in the secret chamber. The Li family's old ancestor said, "This is the core of a high-grade spirit vein. With this, placed in any mountain range, it will instantly create unparalleled spiritual energy. If not cycled, but absorbed solely by oneself, it's enough for a Dao inquiry realm cultivator to absorb for 10 years, day and night without stopping." This was a high-grade spirit vein of decent quality. Its scale was also acceptable. A core less than 100 meters long, supporting a Dao inquiry realm for 10 years, could be considered a treasure. Li Xiandao nodded in satisfaction and said, "So I'll take it now?" The Li family's old ancestor respectfully said, "I've already completed the transaction."
Envoy, you can take it anytime.
Li Xiandao was very pleased with the Li family's old ancestor's attitude. With a wave of his hand, the power of the Bank of the Universe activated. Boom! The spirit vein stirred, a rift opened above it, and then it flew in, disappearing. All of this happened right under the Li family's old ancestor's nose, but he couldn't detect any fluctuations or traces. The spirit vein vanished, and along with it, Li Xiandao also disappeared. Li Xiandao entered the Bank of the Universe without being noticed by the Li family's old ancestor. Indeed, one cannot offend them.
The Bank of the Universe is unfathomable, the Li family's old ancestor said, trembling. Inside the Bank of the Universe.
As soon as Li Xiandao entered, he saw that behind the main hall, everything had changed drastically. A building had appeared. Li Xiandao asked in surprise, "What is this?"
Little Seven said, "Master, this is the Hall of Time, a place to store time." A place to store time. Li Xiandao's eyes lit up.
"Then are there a lot of time here?" Li Xiandao immediately asked. He was very short on time now. His first transaction had used 5 years of his own lifespan as capital. If there was a lot of time here, he wouldn't need to sell his lifespan. Previously, the whole of time had billions of years of time, but now, there is only 100 years. Little Seven said helplessly. Li Xiandao happily said, 100 years is enough. With these 100 years, we'll have bargaining chips for future transactions. Chapter 6: The Debt of Lingshu Holy Land. By the way, how did the Hall of Time appear at this particular moment? Li Xiandao asked curiously. A high-grade spiritual pulse opened the seal of the Hall of Time, Little Seven replied. Are there still many things sealed? Li Xiandao asked. Many. Because the Heaven and Earth Bank was poorly managed before, with a large number of non-performing assets and countless bad debts, during the liquidation, the Heaven and Earth Bank could only mortgage a lot of things, leaving only one hole, Little Seven said helplessly. Now, because there is a high-grade spiritual pulse, the seal of the Hall of Time has barely been opened, Little Seven added. So the high-grade spiritual pulse I got from the first transaction is gone? Li Xiandao asked. Gone. Little Seven nodded. A high-grade spiritual pulse to unseal the Hall of Time, and 100 years of lifespan. It's not a loss. Li Xiandao thought it over and found it acceptable. Master, now that you've had your revenge, it's time to help the Heaven and Earth Bank clear out its non-performing assets and collect some old debts. Little Seven looked at Li Xiandao with sparkling eyes. Those are powerful figures from the immortal realm, immortal kings, immortal fairies. How am I supposed to collect from them? Li Xiandao shook his head. Going to collect debts now would be suicide, wouldn't it? Little Seven said, those cannot be collected for now. We can collect debts from people who are not too strong. There are still debts from people who aren't too strong? Li Xiandao asked, surprised. He couldn't afford to provoke people from the immortal realm right now, but for those who weren't too strong, Li Xiandao could still give it a try. If he could collect some debts, it would alleviate his current urgent needs. Little Seven nodded proudly saying, back then, the Heaven and Earth Bank's business spread across the 9 heavens and 10 earths. No matter who they were, they would seek us for transactions, so naturally, there are many debts. Li Xiandao understood and said, in that case, find me a debt from someone not too strong. I'll try to see if I can collect it. Li Xiandao's definition of not too strong would be below the Dao inquiring realm. He could probably figure out how to collect such debts. After all, Li Xiandao currently had no cultivation and hadn't started practicing. But the next second, Little Seven handed Li Xiandao a debt contract. Li Xiandao opened it, raised an eyebrow, quietly closed it, and whispered, is there a mistake? No. Little Seven shook her head obediently. Li Xiandao opened the contract and clearly saw the big words written on it.
Spirit Void Holy Land.
This name was famous in the Great Departure Land. Even Li Xiandao, who was previously a house slave, had heard of it. The Spirit Void, an ancient holy land with a 10,000-year heritage. It was a top-tier powerful force in the Great Departure Land, with hundreds of thousands of disciples, managing hundreds of secular countries, and billions of subjects, absolutely high and mighty. Was such an ancient holy land weak?
Li Xiandao glared at Little Seven, feeling angry.
Was she deliberately making fun of him? Little Seven explained, this is the weakest of all debts. The 10th generation patriarch of the Spirit Void Holy Land borrowed an immortal artifact from our Heaven and Earth Bank 10,000 years ago to suppress a traitor in the Spirit Void Holy Land. The price was for the Spirit Void Holy Land to become our slave, serving the master of the Heaven and Earth Bank for 1,000 years. Defaulting would increase it tenfold, to 10,000 years. Li Xiandao clicked his tongue and said, borrow an immortal artifact, serve me for 10,000 years? That's right. 10,000 years ago, I was the one who handled it. The immortal artifact was lent out, and we originally planned to collect it with principal and interest 50 years later. But then the previous master died, the Heaven and Earth Bank's capital chain broke, and the other party completely forgot about it, never contacting us. Little Seven nodded. The Spirit Void Holy Land is an ancient holy land. I don't even have the cultivation of the Foundation establishment realm right now. If I go to collect the debt like this, who will pay attention to me? Li Xiandao frowned. He was very rational and knew that even with a contract in black and white, the Spirit Void Holy Land still wouldn't acknowledge the debt. Because Li Xiandao was too weak. Would a high and mighty ancient holy land acknowledge a young man with no cultivation as its master, serving Li Xiandao for 10,000 years?
In your dreams.
Little Seven showed a sweet smile and said, Master, you are now the master of the Heaven and Earth Bank.
In this world, no one is nobler than you.
If the Spirit Void Holy Land does not fulfill the contract, you can retrieve the immortal artifact we lent out.
I can retrieve it.
Li Xiandao asked in surprise. Of course. The Spirit Void Holy Land is not a powerful sect, so naturally, they cannot make the immortal artifact recognize them as its master. Little Seven leaned close to Li Xiandao's ear and whispered, telling him some secrets of the Heaven and Earth Bank. As the master of the Heaven and Earth Bank, Li Xiandao could naturally control all things belonging to the Heaven and Earth Bank. Even immortal artifacts were no exception. After understanding this, Li Xiandao's eyes lit up, as if he had found a way to deal with the Spirit Void Holy Land. Then let's go to the Spirit Void Holy Land and demand the debt. I'm very interested in making a grand holy land my slave, Li Xiandao said with anticipation. For the Spirit Void Holy Land to become the master's slave, that is their good fortune, Little Seven said lightly. Li Xiandao nodded. As the master of the Heaven and Earth Bank, once he grew stronger, Even a small favor to the Spirit Void Holy Land would be an incredible reward. Then let's go to the Spirit Void Holy Land now. Li Xiandao immediately left the Heaven and Earth Bank and set off for the Spirit Void Holy Land, one of the ancient holy lands in the Great Departure Land. The Spirit Void Holy Land was located on a prehistoric battlefield. The first patriarch, Ling Su, founded his sect here, bravely striving for a lifetime, and over 10,000 years, developed his sect into a holy land. Thereafter, every 10,000 years, a new sect leader would lead the Spirit Void Holy Land forward. This continued until the 10th generation sect leader, when he first took power 10,000 years ago, and the Spirit Void Holy Land experienced a crisis of rebellion. The new sect leader was unable to handle such a large rebellion, so he sought out the Heaven and Earth Bank. In exchange for serving the Heaven and Earth Bank as a slave for 10,000 years, he borrowed an immortal artifact and quelled the rebellion. But later, when the Heaven and Earth Bank encountered problems, the sect leader of the Spirit Void Holy Land stopped contacting them, intending to bury the matter in the dust. These were bad debts. The previous master died because of these bad debts. Li Xiandao was determined to retrieve this debt, even if it cost him his life.
Chapter 7 Missing.
The Spirit Void Holy Land is located in an ancient battlefield to the east of the Great Li Land. From Li Xiandao's current location, it would take at least several decades to reach. Taicong City is an incredibly small place, but the Spirit Void Holy Land is different. It governs hundreds of billions of people and is a truly powerful force. Li Xiandao had no cultivation and couldn't fly. Taicong City was remote, tens of thousands of miles away from the Spirit Void Holy Land. Master, you can take a teleportation array. The 9 heavens and 10 lands are vast, and there are teleportation arrays everywhere, both long and short distance. They're much better than traveling on your own, Xiaoqi told Li Xiandao. Li Xiandao frowned, but I don't have any spirit energy to pay. Using a teleportation array required spirit energy, which was the basic currency of the 9 heavens and 10 lands. Cultivators used spirit energy for their practice, and ordinary people used it for transactions. Li Xiandao was penniless at the moment. His only high-grade spirit vein had been used to repair the Hall of Time. I still have 2 pocket watches. I'll take out another one for a trade. Li Xiandao thought for a moment, took out a blood-red pocket watch, then had it remember what he wanted to trade and threw it out. Boom! The pocket watch vanished into the void, and Li Xiandao watched in silence. Xiaoqi said, as long as Master reclaims the debt from the Spirit Void Holy Land, he can resolve his current predicament.
Din.
In less than 3 seconds, the pocket watch sent a message. It had found a new trading target. In the Great Li Land, in a cave dwelling filled with spiritual energy, a white-haired beauty gazed desperately at the blood-red setting sun outside the cave. I've astonished the ages. I've been unrivaled for 3,000 years. I have an immortal heart, yet it's been tainted by the mundane. I was breaking through to become an immortal, but because of a speck of dust in my heart, I suffered a backlash.
My life is not long.
The white-haired beauty was extremely unwilling. Her beautiful eyes were filled with defiance. Though a woman, she never felt herself weaker than anyone. The geniuses of 3,000 years ago, peerless figures, ancient great demons, all were trampled under her feet.
She was invincible in the mortal world.
She had countless admirers, but not a single one stirred her heart. My only belief in this life is to ascend to the 9 heavens, cross the immortal realm, and become the first woman to transcend all ages. The white-haired woman coughed up blood. Even though she was severely injured, the fire in her heart never extinguished. She had defeated countless enemies and reached this point. How could she be willing to die here? If I can overcome this tribulation, I will mend the regrets in my heart, then attempt to reach the immortal path again, and let the immortals in the 9 heavens know my terror. The white-haired woman remained arrogant. But her time was truly running out. Her breakthrough failed, and the 5 declines of heaven and man descended. Her original black hair instantly turned white, and her life force was rapidly draining away. The 5 declines of heaven and man were slowly devouring her life. Her vision gradually blurred. In the years to come, will the world still remember a girl named Qing who astonished this era? White-haired Qing slowly closed her eyes. She was powerless to reverse her fate. In the instant her life was about to end, Qing saw a crimson light. Enveloped in the crimson light was an exquisite pocket watch. Qing didn't know why, but a burst of strength surged within her. She grabbed the pocket watch, then squeezed it hard. She had a feeling in her heart. Grasping this pocket watch was grasping hope. Boom. But the next second, under the impact of the 5 declines of heaven and man, Qing still closed her eyes. Qing opened her eyes, surprised to find that she wasn't dead. Before her was a table, and behind the table sat a tall man. The man had an inexplicable aura, deep as an abyss and vast as the sea, wearing a dark gold mask that obscured his face. Beside the man stood a woman of breathtaking beauty. Qing was a woman, but she had to admit, this woman was truly beautiful. It was as if she was a woman sculpted by the heavenly Tao itself. All the beauty in the world was embodied in this woman. Qing admired her in her heart and asked, "Where is this place?"
Bank.
Li Xiandao said indifferently.
Bank.
Who are you? Qing frowned. She had never heard of this place.
Bank.
Everything in the world can be traded. What do you wish to trade? Li Xiandao asked.
A king size lit up.
She said, I want to trade for lifespan. Is that possible? Qing was truly in dire need of lifespan right now. Under the 5 declines of heaven and man, if it weren't for the Heaven and Earth Bank's pocket watch, Miss Qing would be dead by now. Yes, but what price can you pay? Li Xiandao asked. Miss Qing was stunned. What could she pay? What do you need? Miss Qing asked Li Xiandao. Li Xiandao said indifferently. Then let it be source. How much source is 100 years of lifespan worth? Miss Qing lowered her head, thought for a moment, and said, I will give you 1,000,000 divine sources.
Li Xiandao's face under the mask twitched.
He was utterly shocked. The lowest grade of source was low-grade source stones, followed by mid-grade source stones, high-grade source stones, and top-grade source stones. After that came saint source and divine source. One divine source was equivalent to a low-grade spirit vein. 1,000,000 divine sources. What kind of scale was that? 100 divine sources were equivalent to a high-grade spirit vein. 1,000,000 was an astronomical sum. Li Xiandao was silent for 3 seconds, then nodded and said, Agreed. Xiao Qi immediately took out the contract and said, Confirmed correct, please sign. Miss Qing carefully examined the contract. It was written very simply. 1,000,000 divine sources in exchange for 100 years of lifespan. After reading it, Qing said, I don't have 1,000,000 divine sources on me right now. Li Xiandao didn't get angry, silently watching Qing. But give me 1 day, and I will bring 1,000,000 divine sources. Qing said firmly. Li Xiandao thought for a moment and said, All right, but you need to pay a small deposit.
I only have 1,000 divine sources on me.
Let's consider it a deposit.
Miss Ain handed Li Xiandao a story-jade bracelet.
Xiao Qi reached out to take it, checked it, and nodded to Li Xiandao. Li Xiandao said with satisfaction, Sign it. Once you sign, I will give you 100 years of lifespan. Qing signed decisively. Li Xiandao appreciated Qing's decisiveness. He stood up, walked to Qing, and placed his slender fingers on top of her head. The white-haired Qing, the beautiful Qing, the Qing with peerless cultivation, was actually nervous at this moment. She felt that all of this was incredibly unreal, but at the brink of life and death, she still chose to accept and believe. But when this moment truly arrived, Qing was still a little apprehensive. If it was fake, a deception, then she would truly die. But as Li Xiandao began to input 100 years of lifespan, Qing felt her physical condition rapidly improve. The 5 declines of heaven and man were being expelled by Li Xiandao. Her white hair was also recovering, black hair replacing the white. A peerless beauty was regaining her radiance. Qing stared blankly at all of this. Was the owner of this heaven and earth bank an immortal? He could actually force back the 5 declines of heaven and man that affected immortals. It was too incredible.
Chapter 8 The Story of a King.
Qing knew very well that even immortals were terrified of the 5 signs of decay in the celestial beings. Qing once witnessed an immortal fall from the celestial realm due to the 5 signs of decay in the celestial beings. During the fall, his internal organs were burned, and he died a terrible death. But now, the 5 signs of decay that even immortals fear are easily resolved in front of the owner of the Heaven and Earth Bank. Just how powerful is this mysterious person wearing a dark gold mask? Qing dared not even think about it. All she knew was that she had been granted 100 years of lifespan, allowing her to once again attempt to reach the immortal realm.
That's a no.
The price was 1 million divine resources, which Qing didn't have, but others did. Qing has enemies, but she takes them and hands them over to Xiandao money shop, which doesn't count as a breach of contract. In reality, Li Xiandao is not powerful at all. He hasn't even taken the first step of cultivation, the initial exploration. But it doesn't matter, because in the Heaven and Earth Bank, he is a god.
The one and only god.
Having given away his remaining 100 years of lifespan in the Time Palace to Miss Qing, Li Xiandao stopped. From now on, you will have an extra 100 years of lifespan. After 100 years, the 5 signs of decay of heaven and man will still occur, Li Xiandao said calmly.
Li Xiandao granted a king 100 years of life.
However, Qing did not ask Li Xiandao to remove the 5 signs of decay from her, so the 5 signs of decay will still occur 100 years later. Qing smiled. After her white hair faded, she was a very quiet girl. It was hard to believe that she was someone who was about to touch the realm of immortality. 100 years is enough. In these 100 years, I will step back into the realm of immortals and then retaliate against the 5 signs of decay of the celestial beings. Qing was very confident, and Li Xiandao looked at her with admiration. A stunningly beautiful woman with a heart that soars to the heavens, and who strives to achieve it, Qing is undoubtedly a woman with a powerful personal charm. How do I find you after I get 1 million divine sources? Qing asked Li Xian. Go find my messenger, Li Xiandao said after thinking for a moment.
Your messenger.
Qing frowned and asked. Where is he? I sent him to Lingshu Holy Land to collect debts. When you find him, just give him the divine source, Li Xiandao said calmly. He planned to create a small account to act as the owner of the Xiandao money exchange, while his real body would act as an envoy, running around outside.
The sacred land of Lingshu.
I heard they're holding the Lingshu Dharma Assembly these past 2 days, inviting people from all directions to witness the birth of a new sect leader, Qing said after thinking for a moment.
The Lingshu Dharma Assembly.
Li Xiandao raised an eyebrow. The Lingshu Holy Land is a holy land within the Great Li Land, and its strength is among the top tier. Every 10,000 years, they hold a Lingshu Dharma Assembly to elect a new sect leader to inherit the main hall and rule the Lingshu Holy Land for the next 10,000 years. Miss Qing explained in detail. Li Xiandao understood, but remained silent, as the Dharma Assembly held at the Lingshu Holy Land had nothing to do with him. I've also heard that the new leader of the Lingshu Holy Land will be refining the Heavenly Emperor's brush, a celestial artifact, said Miss Qing. Li Xiandao frowned and said, Refine the Heavenly Emperor's brush? The Heavenly Emperor's brush is a celestial artifact that the Heavenly Bank lent to the Spirit Void Holy Land. Yes, the Emperor's brush was retrieved from the ancient ruins by the current leader of the Spirit Void Holy Land. It was with the help of the Emperor's brush's powerful abilities that all the rebels from 10,000 years ago were suppressed. It is only reasonable that it is now being passed on to the next leader. Miss Qing nodded. Reasonable. Li Xiandao sneered. What's wrong? Miss Qing asked curiously. The Emperor's brush was borrowed from my Heaven and Earth Bank by the current leader of the Lingshu Holy Land 10,000 years ago. He has breached the contract and refused to return it. This time, I have sent an envoy to retrieve the Emperor's brush and to demand the consequences of the breach of contract. Li Xiandao said coldly. Miss Oching exclaimed in surprise. So the Heavenly Emperor's brush was borrowed from the Heavenly Bank by the headmaster of the Lingshu Holy Land back then. I knew it. How could the leader of the Spirit Void Holy Land have gotten such a powerful immortal artifact? Li Xiandao flicked his sleeve and said coldly, they breached the contract, so the Heaven and Earth Bank will naturally punish them. Now that you have also gained 100 years of lifespan, I hope you will not breach the contract. Oching raised her hand and said, I mean what I say, and I'll go and gather 1 million divine resources for you right away. Li Xiandao nodded in satisfaction, and with a wave of his sleeve, Oching's body seemed to fade away, slowly disappearing. In a cave filled with spiritual energy in the great departure from the earth, Miss Oching appeared and looked at herself in surprise. It's all healed. It's unbelievable, truly miraculous. Girl Oching exclaimed, touching her body. Her eyes narrowed as she thought of Li Xiandao's dark gold mask and his terrifying aura, which seemed as deep as the ocean. Deep down, she felt no desire to resist. I must gather 1 million divine sources. Among all the places in the 9 heavens and 10 earths, the Heavenly Dao sect has the most divine sources. A smile appeared on Oching's face, clearly indicating that she had her sights set on the Heavenly Dao sect. Anyway, the Heavenly Dao sect is usually arrogant and domineering, acting recklessly and without restraint. Relying on the backing of immortals, they do whatever they want. Countless people in the Great Li Land hate them to the bone. I can just call this robbing the rich to help the poor. Girl Oching comforted herself for a few moments, then her body flashed and directly pierced the sky. She's going to steal 1 million divine essences from the Heavenly Dao sect. Inside the Heaven and Earth money shop, after Oching left, Li Xiandao took off his mask. The Holy Land of Spirit Void is actually going to hold the Spirit Void Dharma Assembly to elect a new sect leader, and even make the new sect leader refine the human emperor's brush. This is simply outrageous. Li Xiandao said coldly. Xiao Qi nodded and said angrily, they must be severely punished. It seems that since our Chiendi money house doesn't come to collect the debt, they take the emperor's brush for granted. Breach of contract and failure to return it, and even trying to refine my emperor's brush? This time I will make the Spirit Void Holy Land pay the price. Li Xiandao sneered. Although he had no cultivation whatsoever. Although the Holy Land of Lingshu is high above. But Li Xiandao owns the Heaven and Earth Bank, which is more prestigious than anyone else's. Master, here are 1,000 divine sources. You can use the teleportation array to go to the Spirit Void Holy Land. Xiao Qi said. Li Xiandao nodded, his true form left the Heaven and Earth Bank, and headed to the nearest teleportation array. Taking a teleportation array once, it takes 1 high-grade source stone to travel 10,000 miles. Li Xiandao took out his divine source, which was enough to teleport him to the Spirit Void Holy Land. Upon hearing that Li Xiandao was going to the Lingshu Holy Land, the teleportation array keeper laughed and said, Young man, you want to go to the Lingshu Holy Land to become an apprentice, huh?
It's a pity. You're a bit old.
Li Xiandao smiled and said, I'm not going to become a disciple, I'm going to recruit servants. The guard was completely bewildered. What did he mean by taking in slaves? Seeing this, Li Xiandao simply smiled and offered no explanation. To have a vast holy land with a 100,000-year-old heritage serve as his servant, if word got out, people would surely think he was crazy. People will only believe it when it actually happens. Chapter 9 Mortals and Holy Lands. In the northwest region, nestled among mountains, lies a large city. Unlike small cities like Taizong, this large city can accommodate millions of people. It is surrounded by mountains, and the roads are winding and difficult to enter and exit. Therefore, there are 4 teleportation arrays in this large city. This great city is called Lingshu City. The sacred Lingshu Mountain is nestled among distant mountains, so despite its remote location and winding roads, many people flock to this great city. As Li Xiandao stepped out of the teleportation array, the first thing he saw was the sign of the Lingshu Holy Land everywhere. The extent of Lingshu Holy Land's control over this great city is evident. Lingshu City was bustling with activity, especially now that the leadership of the Lingshu Holy Land was being handed over, with all forces invited to witness the event. Lingshu City is the place to stay before arriving at the Lingshu Holy Land.
Standing on the street, Li Xiandao saw many happy outer disciples of the Lingshu Holy Land.
The vast Holy Land was divided into inner and outer sects, and the inner sect was further divided into ordinary disciples and true disciples, with clear distinctions between levels. Without talent and resources, one could not even think about crossing over. Fortunately, Li Xiandao didn't have to go through all of this. He watched with interest, for from then on, they would all be his servants. With this in mind, Li Xiandao headed towards the Lingshu Holy Land with great enthusiasm. To want to refine the Heavenly Emperor brush, a celestial artifact belonging to him, is simply outrageous. They must be taught a profound lesson. Li Xiandao strode forward, not lingering in Lingshu City, but heading towards the endless mountains outside the city.
Beneath one mountain after another, there once lay an ancient battlefield.
Over the past 100,000 years, the ancestors of the Lingshu Holy Land used their great magical power to move mountains and fill seas, bringing together 100,000 mountains to form the Lingshu Holy Land. That's why Li Xiandao sees the endless mountains stretching endlessly. Along the way, the Lingshu Holy Land was filled with a joyful atmosphere, and some outer disciples were excitedly discussing whether the new leader would successfully refine the Emperor's brush. This is a celestial artifact. There are very few immortal artifacts in the entire Greatly Earth. After all, the Greatly Earth is the weakest place in the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The fact that Lingshu Holy Land was able to remain stable among the Holy Lands despite the rebellion was largely due to the deterrent effect of the Emperor's brush. A celestial artifact can suppress the fortune of a sacred land. Who would dare to provoke it lightly? The succession ceremony of the Lingshu Holy Land will be held in a quarter of an hour. Guests have arrived and the square is crowded with people. Everyone has come to see the new sect leader refine the Emperor's brush. For 10,000 years, everyone has known that the sacred land of spiritual void possesses such a celestial artifact, but no one has ever seen it. The Lingshu Holy Land did not use it during this period, so the new sect leader's refining of the Emperor's brush was also a way to show off their power to the outside world. Feng Luo, are you confident? The current leader of the Lingshu Holy Land asked in a deep voice. The newly appointed sect leader is named Feng Luo. He is only 500 years old, but he has already reached a very high level of cultivation. He has the support of the elders and is hailed as the sect leader with the best chance of becoming an immortal. Sect leader Luo, rest assured, no matter how powerful the Emperor's brush is, it still belongs to my Lingshu Holy Land. I am about to become the new sect leader, so naturally I can refine it, Feng Luo said confidently, feeling very proud. 500 years old is not considered old for a cultivator. He already possesses unparalleled cultivation, and now he is about to inherit the leadership of a great holy land. He will soon have a celestial artifact as his weapon. With such a smooth and successful life, Feng Luo's ambition is naturally higher than the sky. Luo Shui looked at Feng Luo, a hint of worry flashing between her brows. He couldn't tell the other party that the Emperor's pen didn't belong to them. He paid a heavy price to obtain the Emperor's brush back then, and the expiration date had long passed, so the spirit of the Emperor's brush completely ignored him. 10,000 years have passed, and the Heaven and Earth Bank seems to have vanished from this world without a trace. So, I shouldn't have any major problems if I don't fulfill the contract. The Luo Shui sect leader harbored a glimmer of hope. He didn't want to return the Emperor's pen. The Holy Land of Spirit Void is very weak right now. The rebellion 10,000 years ago. Most of the elders of the Lingshu Holy Land participated in the rebellion. Although he later used the Emperor's brush to suppress the rebellion, it also caused the Lingshu Holy Land to lose more than half of its strength. 10,000 years have passed, and it still hasn't recovered. Now, the strength of the Lingshu Holy Land is only about 70% of its peak. If this is all the strength one has in the Great Separation Ground, the Lingshu Holy Land should have lost its status as a holy land long ago. The reason why Lingshu Holy Land still calls itself a holy land is entirely because of a celestial artifact. Emperor's Brush. Once the Emperor's Brush is taken back by the Heavenly Bank, the blow to the Spirit Void Holy Land will be devastating. That's why the Luo Shui sect leader took a chance and violated the contract by leaving the Emperor's Brush in the Lingshu Holy Land. Even if the Emperor's Brush ignores everyone now, it is still a great deterrent when placed in the Spirit Void Holy Land. The Emperor's Brush isn't so easy to wield, Luo Shui subtly reminded Feng Luo. Feng Luo, however, was unconcerned and said confidently, "Sect leader, although my strength is not as high as yours, it is still at the level of the leaders of the Great Separation from Earth sect. I do not expect the Emperor's Brush to recognize me as its master in one go. I just need to activate the Emperor's Brush to intimidate the heroes." Feng Luo is quite confident about this. Luo Shui looked at the confident Feng Luo and didn't know what to say. There was a confidentiality agreement when the contract was signed. Chendi Chenzhuang does not allow any disclosure. Of course, Luo Shui has already broken the contract, leaving the Emperor's Brush in the Lingshu Holy Land for 10,000 years, so he won't care about this clause. Yet, somehow, whenever he thought about mentioning the Heaven and Earth Bank, he would feel a pang of anxiety. It was as if, in the next second, if he dared to say it, an extremely terrifying heavenly punishment would descend, destroying him and the Lingshu Holy Land. Go and prepare. Luo Shui waved his hand, his mind heavy with worries, but he couldn't say anything. He could only pray that this Lingshu Dharma assembly would be a complete success. Then I'll go out. The Dharma assembly has already begun. The sect leader can come out later. Feng Luo turned and left. A person walked towards the foot of Lingshu Sacred Mountain. A young man. A young man of remarkable character. A young man with absolutely no cultivation. The main vein of the Lingshu Holy Land is a mountain range resembling a blue dragon, soaring straight into the clouds, high above. Xiandao, on the other hand, was a mortal with no cultivation whatsoever. A great holy site lies ahead, while a mere mortal lies behind. The mortal's gaze pierced through the sky, as if seeing through the endless clouds and mist, and finally saw the supreme celestial artifact above the main hall. Emperor's Brush. Is this the Holy Land? Xiandao asked calmly, his hands behind his back.
Nothing especial.
Xiandao lowered his eyelids and focused his attention on sensing the Emperor's Brush. At that very moment, in the most important hall of the Lingshu Holy Land, countless eyes turned to Feng Luo. Feng Luo was attempting to refine the Emperor's Brush. Flowing true energy surged into the brush like a bolt of lightning, but it was all like a mud ox sinking into the sea, without making a sound. Feng Luo's heart slowly grew cold and sank. He realized that the Emperor's Brush seemed very difficult to refine. Even when he poured all his true energy and magic power into it, there was no reaction.
Rumble.
But in the next second, the Emperor's Brush moved, its radiance magnificent and dazzling, illuminating half the sky. A golden light shone brightly, and an invincible god appeared within it. His face was not visible, but the god held the Emperor's Brush and made no move. His overwhelming pressure had already covered the entire area. At the Lingshu Dharma assembly, everyone watched in astonishment, never expecting that Feng Luo, the new leader of the Lingshu Holy Land, would actually activate the Emperor's Brush. Feng Luo himself was completely bewildered. His true energy and magical power were poured into the Emperor's Brush, but they disappeared without a trace. How could he possibly activate the Emperor's Brush? He himself didn't understand what was going on. Chapter 10. Do you recognize this thing? The extraordinary phenomenon of the Emperor's Brush startled everyone in the Holy Land of Spirit Void. In the Hall of Succession, people from all sides watched with astonishment and uncertainty, feeling the oppressive power of the Emperor's pen, their faces filled with horror. Is this a celestial artifact? As expected, it was unfathomable. Even a slight pressure from it made them feel as if their bodies were about to crack. If it were to unleash its power and unleash a divine law, wouldn't it shatter everything in an instant? Some who underestimated the strength of the Lingshu Holy Land immediately regained their composure. Sure enough, even a starved camel is bigger than a horse. As long as the Lingshu Holy Land can activate this immortal artifact, no one can take away the name of the Holy Land. But Feng Luo, as the person involved, was already in a real bind. He poured most of his true energy into it, but the Emperor's brush remained motionless. Just when he was in despair, the Emperor's brush started moving on its own. Moreover, the Emperor's brush continues to absorb his true energy. Even if his strength reached the level of the general leaders of the Great Separation from Earth Realm, he still couldn't withstand the absorption of a single immortal artifact. Before long, Feng Luo could no longer hold on and let out a scream that startled everyone. "Sect leader, save me!" Feng Luo's shout left everyone dumbfounded. "So you weren't the one who activated the Emperor's pen? You are also a victim. You're being absorbed by the Emperor's pen and are about to die. So who exactly activated the Emperor's brush?" Everyone immediately looked at Luo Shui, who was walking out of the main hall. The savior of the Lingshu Holy Land was the one who brought back the celestial artifact, the Emperor's brush, when traitors launched a massive rebellion. He suppressed the rebels, cleansed the world, and restored the prestige of the Lingshu Holy Land. Luo Shui's prestige in the Lingshu Holy Land is unmatched. Everyone believes that the Emperor's brush belongs to Luo Shui. Now that Feng Luo's true energy has been absorbed by the Emperor's brush, the Luo Shui sect leader must have a way to deal with it. But in reality, Luo Shui was completely helpless when she saw this scene. The celestial artifact, the Emperor's brush, is not under anyone's control. 10,000 years ago, after he brought it back, he controlled it for 50 years. Once the 50-year period was over, the Emperor's brush was no longer under his control and quietly stayed in the Spirit Void Holy Land. Only those from the Heavenly Bank can control the Heavenly Emperor's brush and unleash its power. Feng Luo only wants to refine it. Only after successfully refining it can he control it. Could it be? Luo Shui thought of something terrifying. His face turned pale. Was the thing he feared most in his heart about to happen? "Sect leader, save me!" Feng Luo cried out, his handsome face now contorted in agony. Seeing this, Luo Shui immediately struck out with a palm, his surging true energy like raging flames, transforming into a dragon in the air, tearing at the Emperor's brush, forcing it away, and stopping its continued absorption of Feng Luo. The Emperor's pen trembled slightly in mid-air. Boom! The billowing flames and the enormous dragon that the Luo River unleashed vanished in an instant, turning into clouds and mist that dissipated into the air, creating a massive storm that swept across all directions. Like a hurricane, it swept across more than a dozen mountains, uprooting countless trees and causing rocks to scatter and clouds to fall. This was merely a light blow from a celestial artifact. Feng Luo, having been rescued, asked in astonishment and doubt. "Sect leader, what exactly happened? Wasn't the Emperor's brush activated without being used?" Luo Shui's expression was serious as he said in a deep voice, "I'm afraid someone who can activate the Emperor's brush has arrived." "What?" Feng Luo looked at Luo Shui in confusion, completely bewildered. The other elders of the Lingshu Holy Land were completely baffled and couldn't understand what Luo Shui meant at all. Those who came to witness the abdication ceremony asked questions out of curiosity. "Sect leader Luo Shui, what exactly is going on?" "Sect leader Luo Shui, wasn't it someone from your Lingshu Holy Land who was activating the Heavenly Emperor's brush?" "Sect leader Luo Shui, you are a senior, could you tell us what exactly happened?" A flurry of questions immediately arose. Everyone wanted to know why this supposedly grand succession ceremony had ended. How did it get like this?
The Emperor's brush started to riot uncontrollably.
What did the Luo Shui sect leader mean by that? Could it be that the Emperor's brush doesn't belong to the Lingshu Holy Land? Luo Shui didn't answer any of the questions. He had no time to worry about anything else. The Luo Shui sect leader's eyes were fixed on the heavenly staircase in front of the main hall square, which had 999 levels and wound its way upwards. At that moment, footsteps echoed down the stone steps. Thump, thump, thump. The footsteps were very light, at least to the ears of others, very light, as if they were made by someone with no cultivation. But to the headmaster of Luo Shui, it was like a thunderclap. His face twitched, and his bad premonition grew stronger. A voice inside him told him that what was bound to happen had finally happened. But the leader of the Luo Shui sect was unwilling to admit it or believe it. He stared intently at the stone steps, his fists clenched, his whole demeanor tense. The Luo Shui sect leader, who was an unparalleled master 10,000 years ago, was so nervous at this moment that everyone couldn't help but look over. The stone steps are still the same stone steps. The only difference was that the footsteps were getting closer. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of footsteps on the ground was clearly audible to everyone. Everyone wore different expressions. Seeing how serious, tense, and even afraid the sect leader of Luo Shui was, no one spoke. The emperor's brush hovered in mid-air, having absorbed most of Feng Luo's energy. It could barely be used, and its intelligence had been restored. It was waiting for its new master to arrive. Feng Luo sat weakly on the ground, panting heavily as he recovered his lost strength, frowning as he looked around. He wanted to see who was behind this sabotage, messing up his most important matter. Tens of thousands of inner disciples, hundreds of elders, and stewards of the Lingshu Holy Land all frowned as they watched, each harboring a sense of anger. It's outrageous that such a grand Lingshu Dharma assembly has been ruined like this. Thump, thump, thump. The owner of the footsteps paid no attention to any of this, maintaining a steady pace, and finally arrived at the main hall square, much to everyone's anticipation. As Xiandao stepped onto the plaza, countless eyes fell upon him.
Indifferent. Suspect.
Shocking. Xiandao could clearly feel all sorts of emotions. Among these people was Luo Shui, who was standing in front of Xiandao. A middle-aged man with grey hair, handsome appearance, thin figure, but extraordinary demeanor. Upon seeing Xiandao, Luo Shui felt inexplicably relieved, especially after realizing that Xiandao had no cultivation, which dispelled his worries. "Who are you?" Luo Shui asked in a deep voice, her gaze returning to its coldness, showing no regard for Xiandao. What is there to fear from a mere mortal with no cultivation? Xiandao calmly looked at Luo Shui, and Shao Qi's voice echoed in his mind. "Master, it was him. 10,000 years ago, he was the one who borrowed the emperor's brush from me." Xiandao smiled, looked at Luo Shui, and said, "I am your friend from 10,000 years ago." Luo Shui scoffed. "Nonsense. You're just a mortal with a lifespan of only 100 years, yet you dare to claim it was 10,000 years ago." The people around him looked at Xiandao with mockery. Xiandao ignored all of this, and instead spread his hands, saying, "It doesn't matter if you don't recognize me, but do you recognize this thing?"
Bas.
A blood-red pocket watch appeared in Xiandao's palm, shimmering with an eerie light that attracted countless gazes. Among them, the Luo River performed the worst. Upon seeing Xiandao's pocket watch, his body went limp, and his thoughts exploded in an instant. Scenes from 10,000 years ago flooded back like a flowing stream, and he almost fell to the ground. "Impossible, this has been gone for a long time. How could you have it?" Luo Shui said in despair, knowing that he was doomed. The punishment, long overdue for 10,000 years, has arrived today. His earlier sense of relief was merely self-deception.